Thank you so much, Nina, and thank you, everyone. It's really lovely to be here with you all and to be participating in this collective inquiry. My goal in the 10 minutes I have is to share some of my journey and to bring what I can to this vibrant dialogue on being human in criminal justice and beyond. So, as Nina says, I've just finished a book and I've also just come back from New Zealand. I got stuck there, but I talked about the book for the first time at two different corrections events. And it was quite a profound trip because I could see what I've spent 5.5 years writing about everywhere. People started using my language, or those with lived experience who were very present at one conference in particular were already using it. There was a real meeting of souls, hearts and minds, which is kind of what I wanted my book to do. So you can see it's called Aristotle's Prison, as Nina said, and I'm going to introduce it, read a few short extracts, and then propose a couple of questions for us to think about in small groups. So writing the book has been a kind of pilgrimage. Nina's moving on my slides. Thank you very much. I've written books before, but this one is different. It's not a memoir. It's anchored in data, but it is personal. So I've come out in it as a human being who is sensitive to the moral environment around me and who's not an outsider to many of the processes I describe. So the book is about the difference between unsurvivable and survivable environments and what we can learn from the very few exceptional prisons that facilitate growth and development, something much more than survival. And these environments are what I now call resonant rather than mute. So they transmit a kind of reverence for human potential and possibility. They ignite or support the life force rather than extinguish it. All this can be measured and demonstrated, but I'm not showing you any figures today. I argue that what we see in prison is an intensified version of ordinary human experience. So there's a kind of moral grammar to experience. We can read the text of the universe in human lives. Working in prisons has taken me straight to what is deepest in life, because prison is like a near-death experience, a place where the fundamental values that matter most tend to be revealed. There is much imagination, thought, feeling, and wisdom in prison, and I argue that much more should be done to honour and grow that. So here is extract 1 from the preface. Writing this book was intended to be therapeutic. I needed to make sense of a professional lifetime in prisons research at a time when it looked to me as if a complete moral breakdown had occurred in prisons and in penal policy. I wanted to draw out the positive lessons learned from a long and sustained period of data collection in a series of replications with differences, all of which seem to support the same argument that human beings need the virtues. My argument in this book, based on more than 30 years of empirical research, is that different moral climates shape outcomes such as survival, aliveness, personal development, order, disorder, and violence. In general, the more respect, humanity, fairness, professionalism, and help there is in prison, the more likely prisoners are to survive the experience. These prisons are also more likely to be safe and orderly and to generate less anger and violence. If the main difference between a survivable and a non-survivable prison is its moral climate, then this tells us something important, maybe even fundamental, about the human condition. Immoral climates, degrading treatment, disregard, lack of safety, and feelings of injustice make it hard for us to live. When we see the prison world clearly, we learn a great deal about what creates and destroys human personhood. Understanding this makes it harder to imagine that the way we punish now can in any way uphold or create social order. We need better solutions. All of us need humanity. So what this book is really about is what helps broken people to survive and grow. This is a human version of a biological question. What kind of soil, light, tending do fragile plants respond to? The answer, I think, is that for human beings, the deep regard of others can be life-sustaining. Neglect, violence, and degradation are lethal. Neglect includes chaos and unlimited freedom. Observing and describing the differences between prisons that damage and the rare, outstanding few where broken human lives are mended helped me to see what human beings are up against when the lights we need others to shine for us are switched off. The book is a description of that light. It's anything but an argument for prism. It's an argument for light. So my research life has been intense and meaningful, but also extraordinarily demanding. And I paused when I was exhausted to find the meaning in it. Its meaning is the confirmation I can provide empirically and theoretically that human beings need humanity. This fundamental fact is at risk of being lost. So next is extract 2. This is how the book opens, with a quotation from a prisoner who says, "It don't make no sense, Alison." He's serving a very long sentence. He's in his mid-30s, mixed ethnicity, and originally from the same city as me, although we had very different experiences of growing up in it. We shared these experiences both while I was working in the prison and subsequently in letters. We're approaching the end of an extended interview. Our conversation is deep and sometimes emotional. He's declaring his emotional and moral discomfort with the world he finds himself in. He's deeply aware of its flaws. Its very conception of what it is to be human is mistaken. His world is full of feeling, including moral feeling, about what matters and how he's seen and treated by others, what Andrew Sayer calls lay normativity. He understands at a deep level that what he experiences as unfair practices in prison are morally inappropriate and damaging. The whole criminal justice system, as he experiences it, feels unjust. Its language is binary. His life is confused and tangled, but here he is, stuck and facing a 30-year sentence. Nothing could be clearer or more heartbreaking. The rest of the book outlines my methodology, including the use of appreciative inquiry, and describes a prison that created anger and violence, and then spends considerable time describing and morally measuring unusual or outstanding prisons that grow the life force. The main difference between the two extreme poles of human experience align with the work of a theologian philosopher, Martin Buber, who distinguishes between what he calls I-it relations, in which people are treated as experienced objects and in mechanical ways, and I-thou relations, or environments in which people are seen and treated as experiencing subjects who have complexity and potential as always unfolding. So now I characterize different prisons as having either I-it climates, the majority, or I-thou climates, an exceptional few. Prisons in general, and I argue the world outside, have hardened into a world of it. This itness, or the lack of an organic between, extinguishes the life force. This brings me to the third extract, which takes place in an I-thou prison. This prisoner describes the next slide, thank you. Please try the next one. There seems to be one missing. Anyway, I'll tell you the story. This prisoner describes the experience of being seen and the emotional impact of this after a long period in more difficult settings. So we're having a conversation about staff, and he says, I find one or two of them that are, sympathetic to me. And I ask, what do they see that others aren't seeing? They see me as a person. They see me crying out for help. There's one in particular, he can see the alterations in my mood. He knows when things are not working out. It takes somebody skillful to work that out. And do you know what happens? In that situation, in here, that allowed me to be myself. So I ask, the fact that people are placing trust in you, that's allowed you to be yourself? Yes. I've never been trusted with anything. Or if I have been trusted, I've abused it. So I ask, so how does it feel to be trusted? Difficult. Why is it difficult? Because I'm used to, he's struggling for words. I ask, it's new territory? It's new territory, yeah. What makes me feel good is that they've acknowledged that I'm honest now. You know something? Now, when I do something, this is the problem you have when you entrust in other people. When you do wrong, you feel guilty. I never used to have that, but I do now. I've got guilt and remorse. I don't know where it's come from, where the source of it's from, but all I know is I feel uncomfortable when I've hurt people. He had access to moral opportunities in this unit that prisoners in more typical prisons don't have. Somebody on this unit was always making cakes. Next time you come on this wing, said my interviewee, stay for tea. The ordinary is often the place where extraordinary things can happen. In another example, a prisoner describes his shock at being trusted with a pair of scissors and his discovery of clay in his unit, he felt excitement and pleasure and experienced a new concept of the self. He discovered some of his best qualities: creativity, intelligence, and articulateness. He was aware of a joy that had been missing from his former hard man life. He said, "I'd stumbled across something within myself." What is this something within himself? He's describing a kind of life force or vitality, an animating energy or potency, a word that shares the same root as potential. He was both expressing and finding himself. "I was experiencing the glory of being alive," he said. Prisoners describe the difference between prisons that create anger, violence, and distress versus the very rare prisons that facilitate growth and development as like the difference between the desert and an oasis. The desert is mute and cold, a failed relationship to the world. An oasis is where the wire to the world begins to vibrate. We all become more alive in these resonant conditions where the whole of our personhood is reached. All human beings need a kind of presence or attention that Rowan Williams refers to in his book, Being Human, as almost reverence. These pockets of humanity and life resonate outwards. It's when we're effectively connected that we detect life's source. This prisoner described his prison as a tremendous breakthrough in penology. We had redefined punishment as we knew it. The place was alive, he said. I didn't know when I set out on this journey that I'd be writing about the difference between life and death, or aliveness and devitalization, but that's what's happened as I combed through my research findings and notebooks. Different prison environments demonstrate different degrees of what I now think of as concern for life. Growing the life force might be a helpful way to think about rehabilitation. That's all I have time for today. Thank you so much for listening. And the book is nearly out, but not quite. And I've set some questions or stimulations that I would like us to think about in small groups. We won't have time for all of them, but let's see how you get on. So tell each other a story about something you've witnessed or experienced in prison or in criminal justice that's grown the life force, that's tapped into someone's potential, or brought about an aha moment that turned into growth. And then, what makes you feel alive in the workplace or wherever you are? Think of a moment, recent if you can, when you felt most alive. What was going on? Why did you come alive in that moment? And then, how do we build aliveness? Over to Nina, who I think is going to sort us into groups.
Wonderful. So yeah, we've got a few minutes to think about how do we, those questions that Alison had posed for us. Just a little bit of feedback from your groups. So Javelle, would you mind going first and giving a little bit of feedback from our group?
Let's do it. So in
Thanks,
terms of
Javelle.
the first question, a couple of the responses, the response I gave was surrounding expression, essentially. People, myself being in prison before, and people having the time and space to develop new skills that they never thought that they would be able to accomplish, basically. So whether that be painting, drawing, playing an instrument, these are things that outside of prison people may not have had the time to do, but having the space to do that in prison really allowed them to tap into a part of themselves that they never even knew that they had. And for me, those experiences were really moving. We also spoke about in our group playing music on the phone. So something as small as having a prison call, not being able to access listening to certain songs whilst in prison, and just sharing a moment to play a song for somebody over the phone, and how impactful that can be. Something as small as that can really light up somebody's day. We also spoke about just expression overall, people being able to express themselves through arts, through sports, and so forth. Were really moving and profound in all of these areas and allow people to really feel human. And there was one more thing that was mentioned, slipping my mind.
You were talking about the sound bath.
Oh, yeah, that was for the second
Oh, that was for
question.
the next one. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, so for the second question,
Laughter, I think Jacob was talking about laughter and
yeah, so spoke about playing rugby with some prisoners and just allowing everybody to be themselves in that moment, not thinking about where they actually are, but just giving their all to the game and being able to share those moments with each other, laughing, just having normal conversation without thinking about all the trauma, stress surrounding these environments. It was just a pure moment to basically allow people to unwind and become themselves. And then also, I spoke about experiencing a sound bath with a group of prisoners, and having the feedback surrounding that was literally, it was so profound because people spoke about things like they've never been able or they've never actually felt that relaxed in their life. And then some people also acknowledge that they've never actually relaxed at all in their life. They've always been on a constant go. So hearing that really allowed me to feel alive because, like I said, it's the little things that matter. Something as simple as just sitting still and sharing that moment with a collective really stuck with people.
amazing. Thanks so much, Javel. So we've got
Yeah.
time for maybe one more group to feedback. Is there another volunteer to feedback from another
I
group just
like
about the...
Nina.
Go on then, Caroline.
Yes. First, thank you, people, for your patience about my English. It's not 100%, but I go try. My group is with Selena. It's amazing. Thank you for sharing with me your work about your life. We talk about mental health and and the space when you feeling life. I share about my working in Brazil and now I live here in New York. I share about Vanja. Vanja is a woman, amazing woman in Brazil. She's still a long time in the prison and her daughter too. And Selena tell me about yoga inside the prison and outside too, and your group and your office, and how important is one good team, good moment together. So this is it.
Amazing. And we will hear more from Selena and in our break. So that's a wonderful introduction to her. So thank you, Caroline. And we'll hear more from you shortly in the panel that's coming up next.